What is up, GOAT World? It is me, your boy JDZ, and I'm back at you again with another GOAT Format video. The 2023 GOAT Format dueling season is coming to an end with the GOAT Format World Championship coming up right around the corner. I can't think of a more fitting time to drop the 2023 GOAT Format deck tier list. So today we're going to go through, we're going to tier all the decks, and then you guys get into the comment section and tell me what you think about it. But before we do that, I'm going to go over my criteria of how we're going to tier these decks this time. Okay, so number one, the most important tier on the list is how that deck performed this season. We had several tournaments from all over the world. We had IRL, we had online events, and how that deck performed is going to either increase or decrease that deck's position on this tier list. Number two is going to be how easy that deck is to use. If the deck is easy to use, it's going to go up. If the deck is more difficult to use, it's going to go down. Three is going to be how likely that deck is to win the GOAT Format World Championship or any other major event or any event at all, for crying out loud. How likely that deck is to win. And number four, and finally, is how that deck compares to other decks, primarily Chaos Turbo. So I'm going to take that deck. What is the Chaos Turbo matchup? If it's better, it's going to move up. If it's worse, it's going to move down. So go ahead and like this video right now, get into the comment section and let me know where I'm right or where I'm wrong, and we'll do it just like that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop on into the 2023 tier list. I didn't put all the decks on here. I just put all the decks that have either had some type of success or decks I think are kind of slept on and they can kind of catch people by surprise. And to start it off, I just put them all in alphabetical order. So just keep it simple, alphabetical order, beginning to end. Coming in at number one, we have Chaos Control. This is my favorite deck in the entire format. This is the deck that I play the most. This is the deck that I like the most personally. I must be objective. Subjective, objective. I must be objective when I say that this deck is a shell of its former self, is a shell of what it used to be. The Chaos Control strategy is basically Chaos Turbo, but you're playing a Go Control type package to go along with it. But this deck, I think I put it at B last time. It has been a B for a long time, but I think honestly, if I'm going to be real with myself, I'm going to be honest, this deck severely underperformed this season. This deck did so poorly this season. I don't think it barely got any wins, and I think it barely got any tops. No significant winnings to report from this deck. So actually, I think I'm going to have to remove Chaos Control from the B tier, drop it down to the C tier, simply because this deck has a terrible Chaos Turbo matchup. This deck, unless you are just among the very best player in the game, you're going to have a difficult time when you use this deck. And then the people who are of that caliber of player, they've all moved away from this deck. Either they've gone back to Go Control, or they're going to Chaos Turbo, or they're going to other types of strategies. They're not playing Chaos Control anymore. So because the advantages are too glaring and you have to work so hard to get such little in return. Also, with Trap Does Shoot being so prevalent that it is in our metagame right now, that card hits this deck extremely hard, and it can't fight through it most of the time because the deck is already bricking on itself. And then when you take their one play away, the deck just completely crumbles and falls apart. It is still a good deck, and if the meta were to rotate and there were more aggressive based strategies, Chaos Control could come back into prominence and into the spotlight. But right now, I don't foresee this deck winning the GOAT Format World Championship or having any type of success anytime soon. But I still think it is a great deck, and it is very capable in the right hands. So maybe if someone makes a tough call and makes a good deck using Chaos Control strategy, and maybe it can go on. But I have been seeing a lot of duelists using the Chaos Turbo deck and side decking the Chaos Control type engine or the Go Control engine with the metas and the scapegoats in the side deck. So maybe that could be the future of this deck, but I don't see it being where it was years ago. I believe the strategies have just re-separated to their original position of Turbo and Go Control. So I'm gonna put Chaos Control in the C tiers of deck to start this thing off. Maybe, you know what I'm saying, if you disagree with me, let me know in the comment section immediately. All right, going on to the next deck that I'm going to talk about is going to be the Chaos Turbo deck. Okay, Chaos Turbo, everyone knows what Chaos Turbo is by this point. It is the premier deck of our format, so it is no surprise that Chaos Turbo will still find itself in that top tier S plus level. Notice there's an S plus, but there is no S. I believe Chaos Turbo is that much better than the rest of the decks in our entire format, simply because it is very resilient. There are a lot of cards that you play in this format and you play it and the game kind of just ends. Sometimes Duo hits you hard, Trap Does Shoot hits you hard, Blacklist Soldier hits you hard. All these cards hit you really hard. Well, Chaos Turbo is one of the decks in our format that can kind of find a way to fight through all that stuff. Relative, not easy, but has more answers for that stuff than not. It's extremely consistent. It's not overtly difficult to use. In the right hands, a more talented player can do things that a less talented player can do, but a less talented player can still beat anyone because the deck is just that strong and that consistent. Issues that I see with this deck is that in order to continue to get ahead, the deck is starting to cannibalize itself, and the players who play this deck are starting to sacrifice way too many matchups in order to ensure that they have the better Chaos Turbo matchup. When I mean, I'm saying they're getting rid of certain cards that they should be playing. They have the Trap Dust Shoes, main Trap Dust Shoes, main Mind Controls, just to prepare for the mirror match, and instead, they might make their self weak to other things. But other than that, I think this deck is clearly out front and ahead, and I do fully expect that this deck will be played heavily in the Go Format World Championship. Whether it wins or not is to be determined, but it will definitely be heavily featured in the Go Format World Championship. It has all the potential in the world to win. So I have to put this deck into the S plus tiers of deck. Okay, the next deck that I'm going to talk about is going to be none other than the DMOC Launch strategy. DMOC Launch is a deck that I believe it did have some top performances. It is a deck with an FTK potential, and if built correctly, you can FTK or you can go into like a more of a Reason Gate type strategy. But I had to put this deck up here because it did have a top performance, and someone did earn an invitation playing the DMOC Launch strategy. However, I think all these decks like this, all these gimmicky FTK, OTK type strategies, I think they're good when they're working. These tournaments can sometimes get extremely long and grindy, and when you have a deck that is combo heavy, combo oriented, sometimes their strategy can sometimes just fall apart, and you could just lose to yourself most of the time. That's kind of how it ends up going. So for this DMOC Launch strategy, I'm gonna go ahead and put that down into the C tier below Chaos Control. I think it's a good deck. I think it's a solid deck, especially in the right hands. I do think it's too glass cannon and it's not resilient. You get hit with duo, you get hit with, some of the things that people might send your way. You might not like how it turns out for you. So I'm gonna put that bad boy into the C tiers of deck. Moving on, the next deck that I'm going to talk about is going to be DFT, Dimension Fusion Turbo. Okay, Dimension Fusion Turbo basically is good, just what it says. It has Dimension Fusion. It usually uses cards like Bazu the Soul Eater, banish cards from the graveyard, fill up your auto play zone, play Dimension Fusion, get a huge advantage, and then absolutely get after your opponent. So Dimension Fusion is a card that we have in GOAT format that I think is severely underplayed, but that's a whole nother video within itself. But it did have some performances here. I believe the duelist that goes by the name of Patrick Zero was playing Dimension Fusion Turbo all season, had some top performances, didn't quite cash it into a win, but I think this deck is also really good and severely underplayed. I think this deck has a nice haymaker that can deliver to your opponent, that can just kill somebody out of nowhere, and it also has figured out a way to use the card Dimension Fusion that is just broken beyond belief. So for those reasons, I'm putting DFT as a B. I really do believe in this deck probably much more highly than I should, because it has a pretty decent Chaos Turbo matchup. It has a pretty decent matchup against the Warriors and all the other high tier meta decks that you're probably going to face, and it has out of nowhere killing potential, and it can grind too if built correctly. So I think this deck is really solid. It is not played nearly enough, so look into DFT if you're looking for a deck that you would like to play. All right, moving on, we have the Earth aggro, and oh my goodness, talk about a deck that I have slept on. Talk about a deck that has been going absolutely crazy this last dueling season. I'm talking about the Earth aggro strategy. It has gotten significant amount of tops, significant amount of qualifications, and I didn't think it was real. I didn't think it real, but now I am a full believer in Earth, so much so that I'm going to put Earth way up here into the A tiers of decks. I'm doing that because this deck might not be the very best deck in the format. It might not be, but this deck has a solid Chaos Turbo matchup. This deck is easy to use, and it is damn consistent. You put down a guy, you attack their stuff, and then you win. That is just such a textbook way to play the game. You can banish for Gigantic, you can swarm the field so fast. I've lost to this deck so hard and so fast so many times, and it just absolutely stings the nostrils when the Earthman is coming after you. So I had to move this deck up. A lot of people might not agree with this assessment, but just look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie. This deck is real. I think this deck is a threat, and I would look out for it. This deck topped the Go Format World Championship last year. I think it can make a back-to-back top. I don't know, but I think this deck will be played. Someone will load the Earth strategy, and someone will make a deep run, because this deck consistently in all the tournaments, just look at it, somebody playing Earth and somebody's going to make a deep run in these tournaments. So I'll be looking out for the Earth aggro strategy coming on in to the Go Format World Championship and in your future tournaments. All right, the next deck that we're going to talk about is going to be the Empty Jar strategy. The Empty Jar strategy, you guys know the deck that I'm talking about. It's the deck that you can use the Shallow Graves, use the Morphing Jar, use the Cyber Jar, use the Book of Tay, use the Book of Moon, and then you can kind of try to mill mill your opponent's entire deck, play some serial spell and get a GG that way. This deck, again, significantly underperformed. I don't know why. I have theories, and others have theories that the card Trap Does Shoot hit this deck quite hard as well. The card Solemn Judgment, which is heavily played in this metagame right now, hit this deck extremely hard as well. The amount of skill it takes to use this type of strategy hit this deck really hard as well. And just basically, for the most part, no one is playing Empty Jar. It's just something that just doesn't come up. I think it still has room in this metagame. I think if people are good enough, they can pull it off. I think there was one top maybe with an Empty Jar strategy in one of the GGPs. Someone was playing Empty Jar, but I just don't think Empty Jar is the way. I'm gonna put Empty Jar as our first D tier deck. I put it down here because, again, this deck is extremely difficult to use and no one's playing it. It doesn't have the best Chaos Turbo match because guess what? They're on Solemns, they're on Trap Does Shoot, they're on Discard Traps. You know what I'm saying? They can break up your combos and they can get after you if they need to. So I don't think Empty Jar is the way to go. I don't think Empty Jar is going to win the Go Format World Championship or any major tournament anytime soon. But I still think that there are options out there. Playing like you could play it like a Ron style where you can have some chaos elements and the deck out elements. But I just don't think pure raw Empty Jar is going to be the way. So I had to put it way down here in the D tiers. I still think it's a really good deck. I still think it's a really good deck and it can beat anybody. But if you're talking about those long, grindy, these tournaments get extremely long and extremely grindy, and you're doing that all day, you're gonna run out of momentum and it's not gonna work out for you. And I guarantee that's what a lot of these players are thinking about. All right, so that is going to be the Empty Jar strategy. The next deck I'm going to talk about is going to be Goat Control. Goat Control, the deck that made the format. This is our premier deck. This is the backbone of our format, the Goat Control strategy, and this deck has taken off again, and I'm so here for it. As much as Chaos Control has gone down, Goat Control has gone up because of the way that people are building it and how consistent this version of this deck is. They've also been experimenting with cards like GK Spy. I've seen that taken off. I've seen Recruiters coming back in. I've seen Abyss Soldiers coming back in. I've seen DD Assailants getting splashed back in. Just really changing up the ratios and the numbers and what these monsters lines are doing, what the spell trap lines are doing. I've been seeing freaking Cyber Stein in there. I've been seeing Summoner of Illusions, D-Mog, all these kind of things that these players are doing with this Go Control strategy. Just really, really getting creative and getting the advantages and playing this game. I love this deck because you can just do the most with it. And it's been extremely consistent. It's been winning. It's been putting people into, people have been qualifying on this deck. So for that, I'm also going to put Go Control here right above Earth. I'm putting Go Control above the Earth strategy as the A tier of deck, almost S tier. If we can get a little bit more refinement on this Go Control strategy, a little bit more, just a little bit more refined, I can see that deck jumping right up in there to that S, at least the S tier of deck. It is definitely a super solid deck, a real deck in our format, and I can easily see a Go Control strategy winning the Go Format World Championship. Maybe it's just my own personal cope. I will own that. I am cope, I'm saying? I have my own biases, but Go Control, I think, is an extremely solid deck, and I look forward to seeing the duels. Somebody's going to play it and somebody's going to make a deep run with Go Control. I believe it. All right, the next deck that I'm going to talk about is going to be the GKs. Fan favorite, everyone's favorite deck. Everyone likes the GKs, but the GKs just don't like to win. I guess the GKs just are missing. They're missing they're missing something. People are not loading the GKs into these tournaments, and the GKs are not performing well in these tournaments all season. I cannot think that, I don't even know if we register a single GK top performance in any of our tournaments that we've had. We've had a significant amount of tournaments, and I don't think, I don't know why. I don't know if people just don't like the deck. I think it's good. It seems like they have all the tools. It seems like they can do a lot of cool stuff, but people just are not paying attention to the GK. So for that, GK is still, I got to put them in here as way down here into the D tiers of deck, simply because they are underperforming, simply because they're just underpowered. I don't know if they need more development, more research. Something can happen to these GKs and get those bad boys back into promise, because there was a time when the Gravekeepers were like a meta threat where people were side decking for Necro Valley. Like, it was real. And now it's just a complete shell, almost not even worth mentioning anymore, because the GKs are just not showing up. So maybe someone can catch a wild hair and spring those GKs on someone, because they'll beat you. They will beat you. The GKs will beat you fast, but it's just going to take some courage to pull those bad boys out and get them into rotation. All right, the next deck that I'm going to talk about is going to be another deck that is severely underplayed and has severely underperformed. It's going to be the Last Turn strategy. Last Turn has an OTK, FTK style potential. Last Turn can do a lot of cool things. It plays cards, Jogging the Spiritualist. It has a lockdown kind of feel to it. It can lock you out of the game, stall it out, and then win in a cheesy kind of way. But I have noticed is that in this community, most times people don't really respect the cheese. They don't like cheese. No one likes being cheesed. And so typically people don't like to play cheese because they don't like to play against cheese. Last Turn is the cheesiest of the cheese, or one of the most cheesiest decks we have in our format. And people just don't kind of stray away from it. But I think this deck also has a hidden potential that still hasn't been tapped into just yet. And for that, the lack of development and the difficulty that this deck requires, and the lack of resilience that this deck has, I have to continue to place the Last Turn strategy down here into the D tiers of decks, simply because I know it has potential. I know it can win, but can you see Last Turn winning a long tournament, an 8-round tournament, a 12-round tournament, a 15-round tournament, a two-day multiple 2-day event? I just don't see it, because it's going to jam up on itself. People are going to figure it out, and then they're going to come after you with everything they got. So, but still, it can happen. You know what I'm saying? Don't be deterred. If you want to play Last Turn, go ahead and give it a try, and go ahead and cheese some of your opposition. No big deal. Speaking of cheese, okay, we have the cheesiest of them all, the cheesiest cheese grater that we have in our entire format, and that is going to be the Royal Magical Library. The Royal Magical Library FTK. This deck is the premier cheddar cheese of the entire format. This deck alone is the main reason why a lot of people tend to not play GOAT format, because they are in such fear and panic of playing against this deck. And when I tell you that this deck underperformed, it is ridiculous how bad this deck underperformed. Like, it just didn't get anything done. I thought personally, I made a prediction that this deck would come in and a lot of people would play it, and it would just become a serious meta threat, so much so that it would just kind of make people start building their decks different and strategizing different and playing the game different. That none of that happened. People just continued to just do their thing and develop new strategies and do other things, and just completely did not acknowledge the existence of the Royal Magic Library strategy, just because I think it's the same thing. People don't like to play against cheese. People don't like to cheese. People don't like the FTK stuff, and Library is just an incredibly boring deck, and nobody wants to sit there and be a part of that. So a lot of people are just kind of self-checking it, keeping it out of the game, which I don't hate, but I think there's going to be some degenerates that load this thing up to the GOAT Format World Championship, bring the Royal Magic Library strategy out there and try to get some cheeky, cheesy dubs. And I just don't think it has what it takes to win, because this deck, as you notice, all the decks that I rate lower, they can really only do one thing. They can only do one thing, and when that one thing's not working, you're losing. So I gotta put this thing down here. Maybe the highest I can go with this deck is a C, because it, in my opinion, it is the best FTK that we have. It is the most consistent FTK that we have, but that's all it's got. And when that's not working, you know what I'm saying, you're going to lose the game. And when you start and you're not hitting your combos and you're passing too many times and your opponent's solomoning your stuff and Regeki breaking at the right time, you're going to freaking lose, and then they're going to win. And people are, if on this level of play, like on the GOAT Format World Championship level and on these high tier tournament levels, these duelists really favor their consistency and their own innate ability to win, instead of trying to rely on some type of cheese mechanic. But that I did have to acknowledge that this is a deck and it is legal, and I do foresee this deck being played. Somebody's going to play this deck. I can count on it, and I don't know how they're going to perform with it. All right, the next deck, speaking of more cheese, we're just getting through all the cheese right now. The next deck is going to be the lockdown deck. Lockdown burn, lockdown strategies, stall burn, skill drain burn, skill drain stall, all that kind of stuff. Just straight up lockdown cheese. You guys know the vibes. Just a miserable deck to play against. All the level limits, all the gravity binds, all the skill drains, all the fake traps, all that kind of stuff. That is going to be what this deck is. And I think this deck is also like super good sometimes. Skill drain burns, drain burn, all that kind of stuff. I almost want to put it up here as B, but again, if it's not doing its thing, I'm gonna put it high. I'm gonna put it here. I'll put this deck right around here. I think it's really good. When you got the wave motion cannons going, you got the skill drains going, you got the gravity bonds, the level limits, all this kind of stuff, and you're just feeling yourself. you're winning and you're just like cheesing and it's feeling great. But when you are just getting hit with Decree or you're getting hit with MSD Heavy Storm and they're doing their thing on you, it doesn't feel too good, man. So I think I'm gonna put this deck as a C. Lockdown Burn, we're gonna have to put that bad boy in at a C tier. Okay, next deck. Next deck is going to be the Monarchs. The Monarch strategy. Oh my goodness, man. Oh my goodness, this is a heartbreaker. The Monarchs. Oh, the Monarchs are just so freaking bad right now. The Monarchs are so bad right now. Again, just for everything I've said about Chaos Control and some of these other strategies, is that the card trap that shoot murdered the Monarch strategy, and it's just so unfortunate because everybody loves the Monarchs. No, you will never meet a duelist that says, hey man, I hate Monarchs, I don't want to play Monarchs. I love playing Monarchs, but Trap Dust Shoot just makes it very, very difficult to play. The deck is too bricky, it's too slow, and it just can't get it in. I got to put the Monarchs way low. Monarchs got to go down. They got to go down. Monarchs is one of the worst decks we have in our entire format. And I hate to say it because they just don't match up well against anyone like they used to. They used to have a good matchup against the Turbos. They used to have a good matchup against, the burn and all that kind of stuff. Maybe against the lockdown guys, you got a lot of Mobius in there. Maybe you can get a good Monarch thing going on, but it's just too slow and too bricky. Your hand is always going to be dust shootable. They're always going to have perfect information and all the stuff that you have, all the soul exchanges and brain control. They can play around all that stuff, and they're just going to be absolutely clapping you up, man. So I got to put the Monarchs down here very, very low. Maybe there's something you can do. Last season we had a lot of duelists experimenting with the Cold Wave stuff, Cold Wave Monarch, Cold Wave Stein Monarch, Cold Wave, all that stuff. It just kind of completely fell off because it's just not consistent enough, and it's just hard to play against these meta contending decks. Warriors just jump all over you these days, freaking, and Monarchs used to just thrash Warriors, but they figured it out. The freaking Go Control guys thrash Monarchs, Turbo's beating Monarchs, everyone's beating Monarchs, so people just stopped playing the strategy and they kind of left it off to the side. So I got to put Monarchs super duper low. Maybe they can go up to C. Maybe I can see them as a C tier strategy, but man, they are just so bad right now, and it's just not even funny. So that's just where it is. Moving on. We're gonna go ahead and talk about the Pac-Man strategy. I'm gonna keep putting Pac-Man on these tier lists until someone starts playing Pac-Man again. I'm gonna keep mentioning. I'm never gonna stop talking about the Pac-Man deck because I see people play Pac-Man at least once a week on the ladder. Someone loads up Pac-Man and they'll absolutely get after me, or I'll load up Pac-Man and get after other people. I think this deck is still super good if built correctly, but still it has inherent glaring weaknesses that a lot of other decks have, and a lot of side decks are also sided to beat. You're siding to beat Burn, you're siding to beat these stall decks and all that kind of stuff. Everyone's playing Mobius these days and Dust Tornadoes and things like that. All those cards just absolutely come after the Pac-Man strategy as well. So Pac-Man, again, I'm gonna put that down here as D2. I know it's a lot of D's down here. Maybe I'm being too critical on my assessments, but I think Pac-Man is just not good enough. I can't see Pac-Man winning, even though Pac-Man did win a GFC before. One of the first GFCs was won by the Pac-Man strategy, but I just don't foresee. I think the game and the players have become too good to lose to the Pac-Man over a long period of time, unless they've made some significant leaps and bounds to that strategy and changed it up a lot. I don't see Pac-Man taking off and doing anything significant. All right, moving on. We have the Panda Burn strategy, and again, Panda Burn. I was ready to put Panda Burn here as a B because it just wasn't performing this season. It was down. People were leaving it out, but towards the end of this season, it had some resurgence and it picked up. It's getting wins. It had two really high impact wins. It won the GCI tournament, the largest Go Format tournament we've had all season. It came in and won that thing IRL. So I think it won a GGP as well, and it had some top performances. I think the Panda Burn strategy is back. I think they are starting to figure out this Mystic Walk situation, which has kind of severely crippled this deck. I think they've been in the lab. The Burn players have been in the lab figuring some stuff out. So I'm putting Panda Burn actually up here, back into the A tiers of deck, kind of low A tier, B tier. I do foresee that this deck will be played to go for my World Championship. I do see it being played in the future, and I do think this deck has the potential to make a deep run, and potentially everything would have to go correct for this deck to win, but it definitely can put people out of this tournament. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the Panda Burn strategy is going to do. Speaking of back to the cheese, we're back to the queso, I have the Reasoning Gate Turbo strategy. Oh my goodness, the Reasoning Gate Turbo strategy. Sometimes it feels like this deck is up here. Sometimes, I'm telling you, sometimes this deck just feels like it can't lose. It feels like there's nothing you can do. You're just gonna lose, and that's just the game. It's going to lose. But let me tell you about another underperforming deck, and that's gonna be this Reasoning Gate Turbo strategy. This deck completely underperformed. I think it only got one win this season. Just one invitation to the Go Format World Championship was won with a Reasoning Gate strategy. So for those reasons, I'm putting this bad boy all the way down here into the B tiers of deck. And you might not agree with me. You might think this deck is too overpowered. It might be this, might be that. I think I put it above the Dimension Fusion Turbo and above the Dimension Fusion Turbo, but below the A tier, because it can play Dimension Fusion as well. Just like this deck can play Dimension Fusion, which is this really powerful card. And that card alone will carry a lot of this deck of what it's trying to do. But this deck is just way too glass candy. It can brick, it can just die on impact, kill itself, and people just have way more information. They know how to play against this deck these days. So if you take this deck to the Go Format World Championship, I would be aware that people know what's going down and they're going to be prepared for you. So I would look out for it. But I don't think it's going to be that meta breaking deck or that tournament winning deck that you would think if you just don't follow the game as close. All right, but moving on, another deck. So this deck is one of the newer strategies that kind of came out throughout this season. It kind of shows some prevalence. I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention it or talk about it. That's going to be this relinquish chaos deck, either relinquish chaos or relinquish control. I'm just going to put them both together. The Duelist Wave Mint was having some great success with this deck, actually won some tournaments with this deck. Other duelists have been testing and theorizing about this deck, and it's had some great performances, some top performances. The relinquish deck is basically a turbo deck that can do that has another layer on it that can get pretty aggressive with the Senjus and the Manjus. It can play Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. It can get pluses. It can set the graveyard up easy. It can play Wing Blast and discard traps, things of that sort. I think this deck is also super duper good. I want to put it up here as an A. I think it fits as an A. You know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to leave this deck as an A tier strategy. I really feel that way. I could be cope and I could just all come crashing down. Next year, this thing could be sitting down here as a D. It could be that, because if people don't continue to develop it, if people don't continue to play it, if it becomes figured out and people just stop using it, or people start actually siding for it and actually considering it a legitimate meta contender, it's going to fall down, but as of right now, I think this deck is hot. I do foresee someone's going to play this deck and go for my world champion. I think it can make a run. I think it can make a run in any tournament. I think if you play this deck, you can beat a lot of people with it. So I'm going to continue to leave that deck as an A tier strategy. I think it is super solid. It is super good. Maybe it's just me and my recency bias. I am guilty of that, but I think this deck it's the truth. I'm buying in. I am buying what they're selling as the relinquished chaos deck is that good. All right, moving on to the next deck I'm going to talk about is going to be Recruiters. Recruiters have also been starting to see a little resurgence here a little bit. I think Recruiters have a good position. Actually, I will go ahead and say I think decks, maybe not a straight up classic recruiter deck, like you're used to seeing, has had success, but decks featuring recruiters, I think, have a good position in our game because the warrior strategy is so popular. Aggressive decks are back, as I mentioned. Earth aggro deck is up in a major way. So obviously these recruiter strategies are going to be good. So I'm actually going to put recruiters here. I'm going to put recruiters as a solid B deck. I think recruiters are a solid B tier strategy. I think it's underdeveloped, but I think when it is played, it has good results. I think it's played. I think it's a good deck. I really do. So I'm gonna put recruiters here as a B. I could be wrong. It could really be a C. It could be a C, but I'm gonna leave the recruiters here as a B just because I'm buying in. I think they're very easy to use. Okay, very easy to use deck. I think it's very consistent. I think it can beat a lot of people. It has a lot of good matches. Has a decent matchup with a lot of different strategies. So I have to put recruiters as a B. It might not be the most powerful deck, but I think it can be pretty good sometimes. Just like the next deck I'm going to talk about is going to be the Rescue Cat strategy. The Rescue Cat strategy, again, I don't want to have 15 different variants of Rescue Cat up here, so I just kind of want to put it all into one because there's so many different ways that you can play this. I think the homie Bluetooth have been having some great results with the Rescue Cat, with Earth monsters and stuff. I think that's a really cool deck. I think Pui had some success with the Rescue Cat burn type deck. There's a combo Rescue Cat type deck. There is all sorts of things. A control cat cat deck. There's so many rescue cat decks that you can make in Go format. This card is at 3. It's incredibly busted. It's incredibly broken, but this deck is just incredibly difficult to use. It's way too hard sometimes, and it just throws people off when you're building it from all the way from the deck editor all the way into the side decking, all the way into the end of the game. The deck is just difficult because you got to get those ratios right. You got to get the number of cat targets. You got to know when to set what and when to draw what, when to put the wheel down, when to play who, what, all this kind of stuff. And it throws a lot of new players off. New players go to this deck and I see them misplaying all the time. You know, even players who have a lot of experience, they kind of, oh man, I just messed up playing the rescue cat. You popped the wrong thing at the wrong time and now you just lost. So for that, rescue cat, again, this deck sometimes it feels like it's just you can get a giant trinade last will rescue cat Stein kind of thing and just win, but sometimes it feels like you're just drawing mindless radiance and all this kind of stuff and you're just breaking on yourself and you're dying. So I'm gonna split the difference. I'm gonna put this bad boy as a B as well, just for all the different variants of rescue cats. The rescue cat burn is probably a little bit higher, combo cat probably a little bit lower, but just to break the difference, I'm gonna put rescue cat as a solid B tier strategy in our current game right now, and that's just where I'm going to go ahead and leave it. Okay, the next deck we're going to talk about is the deck that actually won the Go Format World Championship last year. Is going to be the return strategy. Return, again, and I've said it a billion times, I don't know how this phenomenon continues to happen, but this deck and this card and this deck is so powerful. It comes in, has great tournament success, gets a good little cheeky dub or a nice top and nice notoriety, and then it just disappears. No one plays it, no one talks about it. I don't understand it. I can't explain why that continues to happen. Maybe people don't want to be biting on someone else's decks or biting someone's style or something like that. They don't want to try to piggyback on what someone else is doing, but I highly encourage people to do that because that's how the game goes along. But I think Return is still great. I think it's a good deck no matter how you build it, and I think I'm gonna put it up here. I'm gonna do it justice this time. I'm gonna leave the return strategies as an A tier deck, and hopefully it inspires more people to go out here and try to play some return, because the deck is super duper good. And I think there are other applications. You got return, you can play machine return, you got earth return, you got freaking chaos return, you got recruiters return. It's all kinds of stuff you can do. Return strike ninja with return, you got limit removal return, all kinds of stuff you can do that people just aren't experimenting with. It's just a really powerful stuff. So I'm gonna put that bad boy up here as an A tier. I think it's solid. I think it's that good. It already won the Go Format World Championship, was proven that it can do it, and it might do it again. You know, it might go back to back. Who knows, with the chaos return or some type of return type deck. Okay, so I'll be looking out for the return and we'll see how that goes. The next deck we're talking about is going to be the Cyber Stein. I want to split that up from the Reasoning Gate and Cyber Stein because I think they are different enough to be played differently, even though sometimes Stein uses Reasoning and Monster Gate, but I still think they're different enough. I think Cyber Stein right now is just not in a good spot. I think Reasoning Gate, and I think I might have flipped. I'll have to look at the tape and see if I flipped my tape from last time, but I thought Reasoning Gate was worse than Stein last time, but now I think Stein is worse than Reasoning Gate. I'm gonna so much so I'm gonna put Stein down here. I don't think Stein is good. I think it's powerful. I think it can beat anybody. Maybe I can put it up here as a B, but I think Stein is significantly worse now, because when someone figures out that you're on Stein, they know what you're trying to do, and if you don't win, you know what I'm saying, if you don't win right away, you know what I'm saying, they're going to beat you eventually. They're going to dial you up and they're going to figure you out. Stein has zero tops, barely zero conversions. Our main frontline Stein player, you know, Matt Uber, he kind of walked away from the deck, and no one has picked up that mantle as being the Stein guy, and Stein has just fallen so significantly down. It's just not even like, people just don't even consider it. I think one of the GGPs that we had, like 10 or 11 people showed up, they were all playing like Stein OTK, and they all were just getting clapped up, man. And it's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate that the Stein man is out of the game like that, but it is what it is. I think there's just a matter of time for Stein rotates back in. Someone's going to figure it out. I think this card as a tech choice or as an add-on or as a side option, I think it's much better as a splash in your deck instead of the main feature. I think he's a sidekick more than the main star. So keep Stein in the meta. I think he's a good card, but at the same time, carrying a whole deck, I think it's just that those days are absolutely gone. It's too much glass cannon in that strategy. All right, speaking of another deck that we're talking about that doesn't have those problems, oh my goodness, what can I say about the Warrior strategy? We're talking about the Warriors. The Warriors are coming up next. Warriors come out to play. I'm just going,
Warriors come out to play.
just gonna blast. I'm gonna do everyone a favor. I'm gonna slap this bad boy right up here next to this Chaos Turbo deck, and people are gonna hate me for it. People are gonna hate me for it, man. But guess what? I don't care. I've seen what this deck can do. I have seen it with my own two eyes, and I am a believer in the Warrior strategy. I think it is too legit. I think it is too legit simply because it has probably one of the best, if not the very best, Chaos Turbo matchup. Everybody's playing Chaos Turbo. This is a deck that can beat Chaos Turbo the most. And it has win after win. It has significant top, significant showing, significant performances. I think this deck is extremely solid. It's one of those decks that can just Exodia you. No problem. No questions asked. It goes first, set 5, play, shoot, solemn everything else, blade knight your head off, and then the game is over. This deck can do that. And it can beat any, it can do it very consistently too. And it has a lot of different things going for it. Side decking, post side. You got a lot of decisions to make with your noblemans and all this kind of stuff. It can play that whole little in the game within a game better than a lot of the other decks can. So I think this deck is super duper solid. I foresee it will be played heavily in the Go Format World Championship. I think it will be featured, and I think it has a very good potential to go ahead and win the entire tournament as well. Again, all these decks I can see winning in some bizarre world. Maybe not, anything being up, I think I can see winning, but anything, anything can win at any time. That's why I love this format. But these two decks that I have in this S plus tier have the best chance to win the tournament. That is Warriors. Okay, so that's Warriors in a nutshell. Warriors 101. Love to see it. The next deck I'm talking about is going to be the water strategy. I'm going to continue to put water on here too, because I put earth on here, and I think it's only fair that I put water on here because I think earth is really good. I think water can be just as good. I think water's got a lot of cool cards, a lot of cool support cards that just aren't underutilized, underplayed. Cards like Leviathan, cards like Salvage, cards like Abyss Soldier. I think this deck is good, but it just needs some development. So I'm gonna keep putting it on here. Obviously, I'm gonna put it down here in the D tier because it just hasn't had any successful tops, hasn't had any conversions, it hasn't done anything of notoriety. But I just want to keep letting people know that this is a deck in our format and it can be good, but it's just not played. All right, the next deck I'm going to talk about is a deck that kind of just came in on the scene. I just want to put that in here because it's just kind of dropped in on the scene last minute, and that's going to be this. We're going to call it Chaos Aggro. We're going to call it Zagro. A deck that's like a warrior deck, but it's got a lot of flips and it's got a lot of rotas. It's got a lot of trapped. It's like a little bit of everything, but it's got a chaos aggro approach. It's more of a warrior deck, but it features the card Zaborg, the Thunder Monarch. And I just want to take some time to talk about Zaborg and say all the good things about this card and how this card has the ability to be a meta breaking, meta defining type card. And I truly believe that. I think this card is picking up steam. I think people are experimenting with it and playing with it. I think it is a really solid deck, and its deck has come on the scene towards the end of the season, has absolutely been doing numbers. I think this deck is really solid, and so much so I'm going to buy. I'm buying in on the Zaborg strategy. I'm putting it up here, way up here as an A tier deck right away. And maybe again, this is cope. Maybe this is me just coping and hoping that this deck can be something and can be a legitimate threat, because a deck like this is going to be the deck that can kind of force this metagame to revolve. It's going to force these aggressive decks back into the spotlight, which is then going to force these control decks to come back in, which is going to force, the turbo decks to kind of make their decks better to face everyone else instead of just playing the mirror matches all day, and then their game becomes a lot better. It gets that stagnation out of the system. So I think that is a really, really solid. So I'm gonna put the Zaborg aggro, the chaos aggro, the Zagro, the RKO, whatever you want to call this deck, name pending, but we're going to put that bad boy into the A tiers of deck, and then we're going to do it just like that. The last deck in order is going to be the zombie strategy. And again, earlier this season, this deck was kind of running rampant. Alephia was doing some great things, Nova Ethos was doing some great things, and they were having some success earlier on, but then this thing just started tapering down towards the end of the season, and the zombie deck just hasn't been hitting the way it used to. I think this deck is also really good, completely underdeveloped, as most of these decks are. Anything I say would be all these decks are still need a little bit of development, but the zombies have all the tools. They're playing cards like Book of Life, they play Ryu Koki, they play Pyramid Turtle, they play Creature Swap if they want to, they can play Recruiters, they can do all sorts of cool things. But I still think that people need to have the bravery to get out there and really test the limits of the zombie strategy, and for that reason I'm gonna have to put this bad boy still at the B tier. I think zombies have made leaps and bounds. They've had some tops, no significant wins, but definitely had some tops. I think this deck is good, and I think it it can beat anyone, but I still think it has a little bit more work left to be done on the zombie strategy. But that is, in a nutshell, my tier list. These are the decks I wanted to put on here. Again, there are probably more decks. Tell me down below some decks that I should have put on here that I didn't. Also, tell me what you think about the order that I have them in. I mean, there are some things I think I can move a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, but I think for the most part, I have it nailed down correctly. But this is the tier list of 2023. Tell me what you guys think about it. Until 2024, make sure you guys tune in to the Go Format World Championship that will be taking place October the 21st and the 22nd, and tell me if I got all this stuff correct. As always, I'm JDZ. I play Ghost. Till the next time, shout out to the real ones, salute to the OGs. Peace.